After 10,000 years, I'm free. Time to review Fight Night Round 4. So, last video was, recent-ish. I covered Fight Night Round 3, and Fight Night Round 3, being the first entry in the series to be on HD consoles, had to impress the heck out of people. And it did. Yeah, with Round 3, EA really did go all out, making it an absolute graphical showcase that made a lot of people go, huh, I should probably get a new console now, which is a feeling I wish would come back. So when Fight Night Round 4 got announced, EA knew that they couldn't just rely on the same old trick the second time, considering that the next batch of consoles wouldn't be a thing for another 4 years or so, or I guess 3 if you count the Wii U, but that didn't get any games, let alone a Fight Night one. So just how would Electronic Arts go about making us want to buy their new sweaty man fisting simulator? 2 words. Mike Tyson, which usually does get me in the mood for some heavy fisting. This trailer was so incredibly hype at the time. Finally getting to put the 2 greatest boxers in the ring together was a literal dream come true. Hell, this is what made me want a 7th generation console. And then, stupid me didn't get one for another year or 2, and I never bought Fight Night Round 4 until a year ago. But hey, better late than never. First off is the roster. This time around we have a huge roster of 50 fighters, some new, some old, but all of them look absolutely fantastic. Pacquiao and Hatton were about to have their big fight, so made sense to slap them on the cover. And James Stoney, nice to see you, man, how you been? They even have the guy that played the villain in the movie that Stallone would put on the bottom of his resume, if not for Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. Hot damn, if you thought Round 3 looked great, then Round 4 is easily the best looking game thus far. Hell, even outside of boxing games, this looks great. Let's see Square Enix pull off visuals like this today. Granted, maybe it's easier to get away with these kinds of graphics when you only have 2 models to load in at any given time. With the stunning visuals, the best presentation of any boxing game yet, and impressive roster of 50 pugilists for us to knock around, this is clearly shaping up to be the best Fight Night game yet. Clearly, we are in good hands, and nothing about this game could possibly suck, and certainly, I'm not using this to set up later criticisms. But while the visuals still hold up even 15 years later, what doesn't hold up is the modes on offer. See, this was during the awkward teen phases of the HD generation. This was the rise of used games being far more prevalent. Games were $60 a pop, so for a teenager, that wasn't really super doable all the time. So more often than not, we'd resort to the used market. Yes, pre-loved games. And game publishers were starting to lose out. People were out there enjoying their games, having fun, and not paying the publishers. Those bastards. And now, John Riccitiello wouldn't have his solid gold toilet until next month. I guess he'll just have to cancel Christmas, or at least the caviar. His kids will be devastated to not have their 3rd yacht that Easter. To remedy this, a lot of publishers snuck in one-time use codes in new copies of their games, which tended to lock content behind them, but then offered people who bought used copies to pay a measly $10 for that same content. And while games just offered a few small trinkets usually, maybe the online multiplayer too, EA figured it was a 10,000 IQ move to hide nearly the entire game behind this shit. And don't get me wrong, I've definitely reviewed good games that had this in the past, Undisputed 2010, Undisputed 3, EA MMA, they all had it, but they usually just used it to leverage the online content or maybe a couple of fighters here and there. I mean, still not small content, mind you, but you could still enjoy the meat of the game regardless. But Fight Night Round 4? Oh boy, without that online pass, you get a whopping, count them, 2 modes. You get Fight Now and Career Mode, which I guess is now called Legacy Mode. Man, would I love to show you those modes, but EA just had to go and EA it all up. I suppose this is better than what modern games do though, which is sell you a game that's barely gone through beta testing. So Career Mode it is. What the fuck is this? Oh fuck, they changed the controls on me 3 games in, and this is when you change the controls. Oh yeah, sure would suck to have fantastic muscle memory. I've played about 100 hours of these games, like, what the fuck, EA? Did you not think in 2009 that some asshole 15 years in the future would be critiquing this on the internet? How dare you not have that kind of foresight? Okay, so, the controls, they are not good. They've now made it so that body hooks and uppercuts are single input actions, and you do them by flicking the stick either left or right or slightly down at an angle, and you'd think simplifying the controls would be a good thing. But not after 3 fucking games of going L1 plus quarter circle is body hook. Like, do this 2 games in. 2. At the maximum. And if you're just pointing at the screen going, just use the face buttons, jackass, well, the first 3 games all had options that combined the 2 control methods, allowing you to switch seamlessly from being good at the game to sucking at it. Round 4 makes you choose. Do you want controls that suck, or controls that function? And me being me, I just decided to play with the buttons after the new controls just kind of weren't gelling with me. Haymakers are also now behind a modifier button, and I feel that these definitely work better than the last game, but they're still not great. They don't do a whole lot of damage, take a ton of stamina, and really, they only work off of counters. And speaking of the counters, EA did the whole cursed pawn shop from Simpsons thing. Counters are gone, and what has replaced them is a far, far greater evil. Perfect blocks. Like this was fucking Third Strike or something. See, blocking is done by tilting the right stick up, and the game doesn't register that you're blocking until the stick is fully tilted, so even if you think you've got the timing down pat, you still have to account for the travel time, which is... Shit, that's actually more realistic now that I think about it. But if you saw past reviews, you'll know that you have to balance realism with fun in these games, and one doesn't always equal the other. What I don't like about this mechanic is that this is a real thing in boxing, but it doesn't quite work the same way it does in the game. Here, it's very much just a substitute for the parries from the last games, but awkward. I feel like the last 3 games focused way too much on parries, and I think they could have kept them in, but balanced them out by making them either cost stamina so that the CPU, or worse, the player, can't just spam them all willy-nilly every single fight. And the other new addition to the gameplay is the new block meter. If you block too much, this green meter goes down, and when empty, no more blocking for a bit. The problem is that this bar but if you saw past reviews, you'll know that you have to balance realism with fun in these games, and one doesn't always equal the other. What I don't like about this mechanic is that this is a real thing in boxing, but it doesn't quite work the same way it does in the game. Here, it's very much just a substitute for the parries from the last games, but awkward. I feel like the last 3 games focused way too much on parries, and I think they could have kept them in, but balanced them out by making them either cost stamina so that the CPU, or worse, the player, can't just spam them all willy-nilly every single fight. And the other new addition to the gameplay is the new block meter. If you block too much, this green meter goes down, and when empty, no more blocking for a bit. The problem is that this bar refills fast as fuck. In fact, all it will take is maybe 2 or 3 seconds of just not blocking for it to refill, and your opponent is then right back to blocking. I had a lot of moments where I'd gas out before the opponent's bar was even half empty, back off, and my opponent's defense was right back up while my stamina had replenished the length of a gnat's dick. And of course, if you try to push the pace beyond, a glacial speed, you will absolutely get countered hard and likely put to the mat, just due to how much this game prioritizes counters. I'm well aware I'm not very good at these games, but holy shit. Even in round 3, which I felt went at a decent speed while not being outrageously fast, allowed the player to put up some sort of an offense without fear of being punished in a single punch. What this creates is a game that forces the player to play almost exclusively as a counterpuncher, and it's honestly just boring to play like that every single fight. And while the past games leaned way too much on the parries, it felt like there was a lot more risk involved for guessing wrong. Here, that risk has been removed and you have zero reason to not block at all times. Blocking is just the best option for literally every situation. And I say that it's the best option for every situation because the head movement in this game is fucking terrible. It's easily the worst head movement I have seen in any game I've ever reviewed. How I would kill for even Undisputed 2010's head movement. You can barely sway back, and 9 times out of fucking 10, your opponent will still catch you if you do. Your boxer just has the worst range of motion I've ever seen in a boxing game, which makes me think that my guy really needs to work on his mobility. And now, I'm not just saying those things because I suck at the game. I mean, I do, but that's not why. With the first 3 games, I was hooked. I saw what everyone loved about the series. Even 3, with all of its flaws, was still a fun, satisfying boxing game with fun controls and mechanics. But Fight Night Round 4 is just dull. Your boxer moves incredibly slow even if you've got decent speed stats. Worst yet is that there's now just things that don't work very well. It feels like I'm boxing underwater or in a waist-high tar pit. It's almost like trying to steer a shopping cart with a broken wheel and your morbidly obese aunt Diabetes sitting in the front. I was almost completely disconnected from the game and had to resort to other methods to keep myself entertained while playing, which is not something I had to do with the others. Like, yeah, I'd have something like a AVGN or some anime going on in the background to drown out the rap music, but I was still engaged by the actual game. Yeah, here, not quite so much, and I can't even say I'm burnt out by the series yet because right after recording, I played some round 2 to have actual fun. One of the few things that I did find enjoyable though was the hit detection. And not because it's good. The hit detection is laughably bad at times, with this hilarious scene of my guy knocking his opponent out with his armpit. Yeah, punch missed, he didn't even connect with that shit. There is less space between the sun and Mars than there is between my fist and this man's head. The one area that I feel Fight Night Round 4 absolutely kills it in, though, is the customization. You can adjust damn near everything. You can customize your gloves, your shorts, the robes, the print on them, your boots, your fucking socks. You never even see them, but you can customize the shit right out of them. There's so many goddamn options to choose from, like shorts, or shorter shorts, or gladiator trunks. No G-strings though, I checked. Just to be sure. You can select the material they're made from, so if you want your guy walking down to the ring in sequins, you totally can. And that's awesome. And of course, you can change things like body type, reach, etc. I do like that you can just select Mike Tyson's body type, like it's even just called Mike Tyson and not dude who is ripped to shit and will eat your face. And even when you get into the actual career mode and start booking fights, you can select what day to actually have the fight. So if you made it in your stupid little headcanon that one day doesn't work for you because your boxer has a proctology exam, or he has to take his kid to some stupid thing he doesn't want to go to, but you're making him go because, damn it, hockey equipment isn't cheap, you can just move the date of the fight. But then there's the damn training minigames. My god, I'm gonna sound like a broken record at this point, because you guys have heard me talk about the damn training minigames for now 4 fucking games. Just stop with the goddamn training minigames. Look, it was neat at first, sure, but EA, baby, honey, darling, if you can't make good training minigames, don't make training minigames. Nobody likes them. I get why they're here, but they slow the pace of the game right the fuck down and just are not fun to sit through. We have enough waiting between fights due to the game's long-ass load times. Half this game has been spent waiting for shit to load. You have to load your customization options, load the training minigames, load the fucking schedule, and then you've got to wait for your fight to load, which admittedly isn't that bad, but it's just a lot of short load times in between doing everything. And it does add up. The game simulates all of the other fights that happen when you're not training or fighting, and it takes a fucking century for it to figure everything out, because it allows you to import boxers you've downloaded into career mode. But I would rather just not have that as an option. In fact, I think there is an option to turn it off, and I just didn't look for it. You can also just roll the dice and simulate your fights, leaving everything up to numbers. I have not had the courage to select Simulate with ESPN Fightcast. I don't know, knowing that ESPN is owned by Disney, I cannot assume that anything owned by Disney is going to work in my favor, especially not nowadays. And to be brutally honest with you, giving EA Sports Fight Night Round 4 such a scathing review wasn't easy. It didn't make me feel good about myself. I feel like I was sitting in class and some kid was acting out and I'd be like, hey, what are you, retarded? And turns out he is, and I feel like an asshole. I called the retarded kid a retard. Like, that doesn't make me feel good. This is the game that everyone says is the best one. It's the Empire Strikes Back or the Final Fantasy VI of the series, the one that everyone points to and goes, that one. But I just don't see it. Aside from the absolutely gorgeous visuals and honestly impressive roster, Round 4 is held back by nearly everything else. It's held back by the just awkward punching controls, the gameplay that focuses almost exclusively on playing as a counterpuncher and actively punishes the player for trying to set any sort of a pace above glacial. And despite its career mode being, impressively deep, to the point where I kind of just wish it was in a better game, I really cannot say this game is worth playing nowadays. Hell, even back then, you could just make whatever new boxers this game added in Round 3 and have a much better time. And that's all without the modes locked behind a goddamn $10 paywall that you can't even access anymore because nobody had the hindsight to think that maybe people might want to play an old game at some point. I wanted to like this game. Everything people have told me about it, the way it looks, everything spoke to me. It looked and sounded amazing. But when compared to the last 3 games, it's just not. Is it a more accurate depiction of boxing? Not really. I mean, it is, but not by leaps and bounds, and certainly not enough to put it above Round 3. You want a fantastic boxing game, play Round 3, or hell, play Round 3 and then play Victorious Boxers 2, because I hadn't mentioned that game once this whole video, and if I don't, then I will absolutely explode.